could argue he was probably at the time one of the most wanted men in the world. Yet he was this guy in the south side of Glasgow. In terms of Glasgow crime, this is highly unusual and probably on a scale never seen before. And it gave him a fantastic lifestyle, which eventually caught up with him.
Take the big deep breath when you do it.
What do you want to know?
There's certainly no shortage of crime in Glasgow. The city is widely recognised for its violent tendencies. It was once even named the murder capital of Europe. Crime in Glasgow generally alludes to very physical, emotionally driven actions. This is what makes the case of Elliot Castro so shocking. A person considered one of the most prolific fraudsters the UK has ever seen due to a series of crimes he began committing when he was just a teenager.
I mean, it's a very unusual case. It's a young man from Battlefield in the south side of Glasgow, had quite a kind of sort of unusual, sort of checkered upbringing, and he suddenly found himself working in a call centre in Glasgow and saw the opportunity to kind of create some sort of bogus identities using the information that was coming into the call centre.
Elliot Castro had an ordinary upbringing in Glasgow's south side. He had nice, normal parents and lived in a safe community. Yet he is the perpetrator of a number of fraudulent acts that gripped Britain in the early 2000s. Born in 1982 in Aberdeen, to a Scottish mother and Chilean father, he grew up in the Battlefield area of Glasgow. Elliot left school at 16 years old with no qualifications, but managed to secure a job in a local call centre selling mobile phones. He claimed to be 18 to get his foot in the door. Now keep in mind that at this time the concept of credit payments and the nature of these transactions was still relatively new, and so there wasn't the safeguards in place that we have today, such as voice recognition and recorded calls. Elliot soon realised that the job put him in a position of power. The customers on the other end of the call trusted him with their personal information. They willingly handed it over without doubting his authority. At one point, he began recording these details in a notebook. He would even use psychological tactics to retrieve extra information from them, mimicking their accent and tone to increase his trustability. He would say stuff like, "There's a slight issue with the bank, they've asked me to collect some extra information." And then the recipient would usually respond with enthusiasm, unquestioning. What he then did was call the credit card companies pretending to be the account holders, change the address to his own in Glasgow, say he'd lost the card and ask if they could send out a new one. Once he'd received it, he would call and change the address back to avoid suspicion. These were the days before chip and pin, so when he spent, all he'd have to do was swipe and then mimic a signature. At first, all he was buying was CDs, and then, by his own words, he developed an addiction to getting away with it. He tested the boundary more, and the spending became much more extravagant.
He was working as a teenager in a position of trust. He was working in a call centre, as many people do across the UK, and instead of putting the transaction through in the way that he was supposed to, he put it through in a different way. He found a kind of crack in the system, didn't immediately get found out, and then things escalated fast. This became a fraud on an industrial scale.
Elliot scammed over £2 million in credit through fraudulent tactics over a period of just a few years. He used this money to travel the world and buy designer goods. He pretended to be people that he wasn't and partied with celebrities. And eventually in 2005, after an international investigation, he was arrested for the final time and given a 2-year sentence. Upon release, he was hired by some major banks and even the FBI as a fraud consultant and now helps prevent scams. He still lives in the south side of Glasgow today and DJs around the city's clubs.